Hi everybody, welcome back on It Up with Annie. We are going to begin with literary theory and criticism, and the first topic that I am going to start with is new criticism, so that a background to structuralism is built. After this, we'll do structuralism. So this session is solely dedicated to new criticism itself, and for your own study, I would suggest that you take at least two books. One is P.K. Nair and the other will be Peter Barry. So if alongside when we are reading you read these two books, everything will be very clear and you will be very confident with your theory and criticism part. Let's begin. Now what is new criticism? New criticism जो है, it is an approach to textual analysis and it emerged in the early 20th century. Textual analysis. All the new critics that they focused upon was text. The main thing about new critics was that they would say that we don't need the author's background, we don't need any other context other than the text itself. That is why autotelic text, they say that the text stands for itself, it is autotelic. And they said that to analyze a text, to produce meaning of a text, we don't need to see कि background क्या है, author कौन है text का. तो इन्होंने close reading पे focus किया कि हम सिर्फ text को पढ़ेंगे और उसका meaning, words, जो भी उसमें लिखा गया है, जो भी उसमें form use किया है, style use किया है, we will see all of that and we will understand the meaning of a text. This term new criticism was actually given quite later, 1941. It came with John Crow Ransom's essay. It was called New Criticism in 1941, and that's where the name New Criticism comes from. I've put a list of some of the most important new critics: Kenneth Brooks, Robert Penn Warren, William Wimsatt, Monroe Beardsley. They have worked together mostly, Wimsatt and Beardsley. Then R.P. Blackmore, I.A. Richards, T.S. Eliot, Alan Tate. These are some of the most important new critics, or those who have contributed to this new criticism. These are the major pointers that you need to understand in new criticism. First is close textual analysis that I said. So new critics जो है, they focused on close textual analysis, emphasizing the internal features and structure of a literary work rather than the external factors like authorial intention or historical context. ठीक है? तो close textual analysis है, इन्होंने emphasize किया internal features को कि text के अंदर क्या features हैं, है ना, वर्ड्स कैसे यूज्ड हैं, पंक्चुएशन क्या है, स्टाइल क्या यूज है, टोन क्या यूज्ड है. Not the external factors. What are the external factors? What were the intentions of the author when the author wrote the work? Or what was the historical context? In which setting did author write the work? They were not interested in that. Second point is formal aspects of a text, formalism. The term also is very much closely associated with new critics. So new critics emphasize the formal aspects of a text, जैसे कि its language, imagery, symbols and patterns. They believe that a poem or a literary work should be treated as an independent, self-contained entity. So like I just said, that close textual analysis, internal features. And what are those features? The formalism, the formal aspects of a text. Language कैसी used है, pattern क्या है, imagery कैसी used है, ये सारी चीज़ों पे वो focus करते हैं. And because if we look at literature and if we see the use of language, तो सबसे अच्छा, सबसे refined kind of a language is mostly used in poetry, and that is why new critics जो हैं, they in the beginning focused on poetry. So they believe that a poem or any other literary work should be treated as an independent entity. It should be treated as a self-contained entity. Third point, intentional and affective fallacy. Two very important concepts that are associated with new criticism. Intentional fallacy क्या होता है और effective fallacy क्या होता है? Intentional fallacy or intention, author की intention. So as I said, new critics were not interested in the intentions of the author, and this अब fallacy क्या है? Fallacy is something, some mistake, some error. So when you are analyzing a work, अगर आप ये सोच के एनालाइज करो कि ऑथर ने क्या इंटेंशन यूज करके इसको लिखा है, देन दैट इज अ फैलेसी. ठीक है. अनदर कॉन्सेप्ट वाज अफेक्टिव फैलेसी. अफेक्शन, इमोशंस. सो इफ यू आर एनालाइजिंग अ वर्क and you are seeing that what was the effect that was left on you after reading that work, and if you're analyzing the work on that emotion, on that effect that it left on you, then that is also an error. So new critics reject the idea of using author's intention or the emotional response of the reader as the basis for interpreting a text. So intentional fallacy author से related है, author की intention, और affective fallacy readers से related है कि readers पे क्या emotional, readers का क्या emotional response था towards the text. They argue that meaning of a work should be derived solely from the words on the page rather than any external factors. The fourth point is paradox and ambiguity. Two words, two very important points: paradox and ambiguity. New critics appreciate paradoxes and ambiguity in a text. In fact, जो new critics थे ना, उन्होंने इन दोनों पे बहुत काम किया है. पैराडॉक्स पे भी बहुत काम किया है, आयरनी पे भी बहुत काम किया है, यूनिटी पे काम किया है, एम्बिग्विटी पे काम किया है. एंड इन फैक्ट दे अप्रिशिएट इट. If there are paradoxes in a text, if there are ambiguities in a text, they appreciate it, seeing them as opportunities for multiple interpretations. क्योंकि उनका solely काम है टेक्स्ट को एनालाइज करना. तो टेक्स्ट में जितनी अच्छी चीज़ें, जितनी कॉम्प्लेक्स चीज़ें भी होंगी, दे विल अप्रिशिएट इट बिकॉज इट विल lead to multiple interpretations, right? They believe that the tensions and contradictions within a work contribute to its richness and complexity. Tension. Alan Tate has also talked about tensions. So all the new critics believe that जितनी tensions हैं, that balance, and contradictions अगर work में होंगी, तो it will contribute to the richness and complexity of the work. These are the major 4 points of new critics, new criticism. Close textual analysis, formalism, intentional fallacy, affective fallacy, paradox and ambiguity. Ambiguity क्या होता है? Multiple meanings अगर हो तो वो text एक ambiguous हो जाता है, आप meaning नहीं derive कर पा रहे हो. Now we will look at the most important texts of new criticism, and you should all have this list with you. Principles of Literary Criticism by I.A. Richards. And in fact, if you want to understand new criticism absolutely very well, please go through these texts. Go through, of course, not the entire text, you don't have time for that, but look at the key points of these texts. What does it say? Second is Practical Criticism, again by I.A. Richards, 1929. See the date, 24, 29. Jabki new criticism, the term was not derived until 41. John Crow Ransom. Next is Understanding Poetry by Kenneth Brooks and Robert Penn Warren. दोनों ने साथ में लिखा है, 1938. Next is The New Criticism by John Crow Ransom, in which the term New Criticism was coined, 1941. Understanding Fiction by Kenneth Brooks and Robert Penn Warren, 1943. अच्छा, dates इनकी प्लीज़ याद रखना, because chronology आ जाती है इन texts से. The Well-Wrought Urn, very important text. The subtitle is Studies in the Structure of Poetry by Kenneth Brooks, 1947. इसमें क्या है, Brooks जो है, he explores the formal aspects of poetry, examining the relationship between structure and meaning. He discusses poets like John Donne, T.S. Eliot and G.M. Hopkins in this text. You might be asked that to illustrate his idea. So ये कोशिश करते हैं इसमें जानने की कि स्ट्रक्चर और मीनिंग में क्या रिलेशनशिप है स्ट्रक्चर के बारे में हम आगे स्ट्रक्चरलिज्म में डिटेल में पढ़ेंगे. Next is the verbal icon, Studies in the Meaning of Poetry by Wimsatt and Beardsley, 1954. They address issues such as intentional fallacy and affective fallacy. जो दो essays हैं separate, intentional fallacy, affective fallacy, both in the verbal icon. So you can say that yes, the issues of intentional and affective fallacy are discussed in the verbal icon, which become central concerns of new criticism. The intentional fallacy, again the essay by Wimsatt and Beardsley, 54. The new criticism, pro and contra. This is a text anthology hai ye. It was edited by A.O. Aldrich. It was first published in 1964. So these are some of the key texts that you have to go through while you're doing criticism. Next is, I have just listed down the important terms and concepts that come from new criticism. First is close reading. I think it is very much clear now what close reading is. So it is associated with new critics like I.A. Richards, Kenneth Brooks. Achha, I.A. Richards ne, why is close reading associated with I.A. Richards specially? See, I.A. Richards ne kya kiya na, when he had this, he published these works, Practical Criticism and Principles of Literary Criticism, and he wanted to see the form and the language of the text. And so to do that, he did this experiment. He took out some prints of poems, and he took out all the background information. कि कौन author है, क्या historical background है, just the text. And he distributed it amongst his students. And he asked them to interpret it. ठीक है? तो he wanted to see that what kind of a response will come. तो जो हम आज हमारे एग्जाम्स में आता है ना, analyze the poem, critically appreciate the poem, तो वो start I.A. Richards ने किया था. So that is why close reading is very much associated with I.A. Richards. So he handed out poems to students after removing all information about the author or the context in order for them to come to an understanding of the mechanics of literary responses unmediated by anything other than the text and the reader. So he did not want that his students should be mediated by any other information like the author or the background. They simply wanted the students to look at the text and see what they understand with the text. So it was started by I.A. Richards. Next, intentional fallacy and affective fallacy, another concept that I just talked about. It was coined by Wimsatt and Beardsley in their essay in 46 and 49. Ambiguity, elements in a text that can be interpreted in multiple ways. कोई भी अगर ऐसी कोई एलिमेंट है आपके टेक्स्ट में जिसको आप मल्टीपल वेज से इंटरप्रेट कर सकते हो और हैव मोर देन वन पॉसिबल मीनिंग, एम्बिग्विटी. इट वाज डिस्कस्ड बाय क्रिटिक्स लाइक विलियम एम्पसन एंड क्लेनेथ ब्रूक्स. सो विलियम एम्पसन का बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट टेक्स्ट है द 7 टाइप्स ऑफ एम्बिग्विटी. डिड आई जस्ट मिस दैट टेक्स्ट? 7 टाइप्स ऑफ एम्बिग्विटी. ओ माय गॉड, यस, प्लीज राइट दैट डाउन. It should be 1930. So here, I'll just write it down. 7 types of ambiguity by okay, 1930. The text is in 1930. And the well-wrought urn, yes, that is written 1947. These two are very important texts. Okay, I'll come back to the concepts. So ambiguity, 7 types of ambiguity. So Kenneth Brooks ने 7 different तरह की ambiguities को discuss किया है अपने work में. 7 types of ambiguity. He has seen that how double meaning leads to ambiguity. Basically, he has seen that कौन सी ऐसी चीज़ें हैं that leads to ambiguity, right? So if 2 words of different meanings are posed together, it leads to ambiguity. Then he has talked about the confusion that the author discovers along when he is writing the text. तभी कुछ author को कुछ नया याद आ जाए, it leads to ambiguity. So there are different 7 types. Please read that. The next term is paradox. Kenneth Brooks has studied it in detail. The presence of contrary ideas, images or statements within a text. It was emphasized by critics like Kenneth Brooks and T.S. Eliot. Alright? This is about new criticism in total. I hope you've understood. As I said, please read it from the 2 books. Now I have right now this book, P.K. Nair, and I'm just going to quickly give you a revision from the book itself. When you begin with the first page, you'll see that it talks about how it was developed. New criticism, the term, it comes from John Crowe Ransom's 1941 essay of the same title. Then it talks about how new criticism is associated with the works of Kenneth Brooks, Robert Penn Warren, Wimsatt and Beardsley, R.P. Blackmore and I.A. Richards. They argue that author's intention behind a work is less important than the meaning generated by the language, style and the formal features of the text. Then Wimsatt and Beardsley's essay, The Intentional Fallacy, 1954, even they have proposed this in the text, that there is no need to bring external factors, external features like author, biography or history to understand a text. Then autotelic text, the term autotelic text is given. After that, new criticism, it pays attention to close reading, it pays attention to form, style, paradox, ambiguity, images, metaphors, meter, rhythm, sounds, etc. And then it talks about William Empson's 7 Types of Ambiguity, 1930, and Kenneth Brooks' The Well-Wrought Urn, 1947. They are the excellent examples of the work done by the new critics. And then they have talked not a lot in detail, but the ambiguities of William Empson. After that, I.A. Richards बताया है Practical Criticism, Principles of Literary Criticism, 1929-1924, and how he paid attention to the form and the language of the text, and what I just told you about passing on the poems to his students and understanding the responses. So that's all that is given in this. It's the first 2 pages of this book. I hope you've understood. If there is any confusion, please ask me, and you can join our Telegram group. I've put the link in the description box. Please share the video, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done that yet. I will see you with structuralism in the next session. Thank you.